This is the audiobook that confronts the voice inside you, the one that doubts you, delays you, sabotages you. That voice has owned your decisions for years, but today, it loses its power. You are here for one reason: to take command of your mind, to silence fear, to break the loop of overthinking, to stop waiting for permission you never needed. From this moment forward, every thought bends to your will. Every emotion obeys your direction. You are about to dismantle the old identity and build the disciplined one. This is your turning point, and it starts right now. Chapter 1. Stop letting fear think for you. Fear has been thinking for you for far too long. That's the truth most people never admit. They wake up, get dressed, go through their routines, and never realize that every choice they make is filtered through fear's voice, not their own. Fear whispers first, and they obey without hesitation. But today that changes. Today you draw a line, because fear speaks, but you decide. Fear runs automatic scripts. Scripts you did not write. Scripts you did not question. Scripts you have been following since childhood. Fear tells you to hesitate. Fear tells you to wait. Fear tells you to stay small, stay quiet, stay predictable. Fear tells you to survive instead of lead. And without discipline, you default to fear every time. That's the key. Without discipline, fear wins. Look at your life. Look at every moment you held back. Applying for the job you knew you wanted, but you hesitated. Starting the business you've been thinking about for years, but you delayed. Having the difficult conversation that could have changed everything, but you avoided it. Those weren't decisions. Those were fear-driven reactions. Automatic, unchallenged, unconscious. But here's the truth: you have a choice. You always did. You simply didn't use it. You let fear think for you, speak for you, act for you. And the result? A smaller life, a constrained life, a life shaped by defense instead of direction. Fear speaks, but you decide. That is the foundational principle of this entire audiobook. If you understand it, internalize it, and practice it, everything begins to shift. Because fear will always speak. It never goes silent, but does not deserve the final say. Let's get honest. You weren't born afraid. You learned to be afraid. You learned it through repetition, through failure, through embarrassment, through criticism, through a world that teaches comfort over courage. You learn fear the same way you learn to walk, step by step. That means you can unlearn it the same way, step by step, choice by choice, decision by decision. But nothing changes until you do one thing: interrupt the script, interrupt the automatic thoughts, interrupt the panic, interrupt the hesitation, interrupt the urge to run, interrupt the instinct to shrink. Interrupt it all. Fear speaks, but you decide. Right now, your brain has a pattern, a fear-first pattern. Something triggers you, a challenge, a new opportunity, a confrontation, and your brain instantly fires a warning. Stop, hold back, stay safe, and without thinking, you listen. It's not conscious, it's reflex. That reflex becomes habit. That habit becomes personality. That personality becomes identity. And suddenly, you say things like, "I'm just nervous. I'm just shy. I'm just cautious. I'm just indecisive." No, you're not. Those are not identities. Those are trained reactions. Reactions reinforced by fear. Let me make this clear. Fear-based thoughts become identity if you never challenge them. That's how learned helplessness forms. It sneaks up slowly. You avoid discomfort once, then twice, then 10 times, and eventually you assume you have no power. But you do. You always did. The problem wasn't ability. The problem was permission. You kept giving fear permission to run the show. Fear speaks, but you decide. You don't need fear's permission. You don't need anyone's permission. You only need discipline. Because it's not about fear. It's about discipline. Fear can shout. Fear can scream. Fear can shake your bones. But discipline is what decides the action. And that brings us to the first tool of this book. The tool that will break the automatic script. The tool that will put you back in control. The 10-second rule. Here's how it works. When fear rises, pause. When hesitation shows up, pause. When your chest tightens or your thoughts speed up, pause. Just 10 seconds. 10 seconds to claim your power. 10 seconds to interrupt the pattern. 10 seconds to choose. Step 1, pause. You stop the autopilot. You cut the momentum of fear before it carries you away. Step 2, label the fear. Say it clearly. This is fear talking, not truth, not intuition, not identity, just fear. Fear doing what fear does. Fear blowing smoke. Fear firing alarms that don't match reality. When you label it, you weaken its influence. Naming the enemy reduces its power. Step 3, choose a counteraction. One deliberate action that goes against the fear. Small or large, it doesn't matter. Send a message. Make the call. Hit submit. Start writing. Walk into the room. Say the truth. Do the thing fear wants you to avoid. You're not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for command. The 10-second rule is simple. It's fast, and it works because it disrupts the brain's fear sequence before the chemicals flood your system. You break the loop before it becomes paralysis. And remember this, fear speaks, but you decide. That is your advantage. Fear is predictable. Fear is repetitive. Fear uses the same tricks every time, but you are adaptable. You can train discipline. You can override automatic thoughts with intentional action. Fear hates intention. Fear hates clarity. Fear hates direction, because fear thrives in confusion. Fear thrives in uncertainty. Fear thrives when you react without thinking. But the moment you pause, label, and choose, fear loses. Let's make this real. You're about to apply for a job that scares you. Fear speaks. You're not qualified. You pause. You label it. This is fear thinking for me. You choose. You submit the application anyway. You're about to confront someone who crossed a boundary. Fear speaks. Don't create conflict. You pause. You label it. You choose. You speak calmly and clearly within 10 seconds. You're about to start the first workout after months of procrastination. Fear speaks. You'll look stupid. You pause. You label it. You choose. You walk into the gym anyway. Fear speaks, but you decide. Every time you act in spite of fear, you reclaim territory inside yourself. You weaken the old identity. You strengthen the new one. You prove that your mind listens to you. You prove that discipline is stronger than emotion. You prove that courage is a skill, not a trait. And let's be clear, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the discipline to choose action while fear talks. Courage is decision. Courage is command. Courage is refusing to let fear write the story. Fear speaks, but you decide. This is your turning point. This is the moment where you finally take ownership of your reactions. This is where you stop outsourcing your life to fear. Because the life you want is on the other side of disciplined action. Not perfect action, disciplined action. So remember the rule. Pause, label, choose. 10 seconds. Every time fear shows up. Every time hesitation creeps in. Every time doubt tries to negotiate. You interrupt the script. You break the habit. You reclaim your identity. Because fear speaks, but you decide. And now that you've learned how to silence fear's automatic script, you're ready for the next level. You're ready to confront the real enemy behind hesitation and stagnation. The endless loop of overthinking. You mastered the fear. Now let's talk about the mental trap that steals your momentum. Chapter 2. Overthinking is a decision. Overthinking is not a personality trait. It is not your zodiac sign. It is not just how your mind works. Overthinking is a decision. You make it. You reinforce it. You repeat it. And because you repeat it, it feels automatic. But it's not automatic. You have a choice. People love pretending they don't have that choice. They say, I'm an overthinker, the same way someone might say, I'm left-handed, as if it's biological, as if it's encoded in their DNA, as if the universe assigned them a mind that loops forever. But that's a lie. That's the comfortable lie. The truth is much simpler and much harder to swallow. You choose the loop instead of action. You choose hesitation instead of movement. You choose fear instead of progress. You have a choice. Overthinking kills momentum. It kills it fast. Momentum in your work. Momentum in your fitness. Momentum in your relationships. Momentum in every area where progress is built through repeated, disciplined action. Overthinking is the enemy of repetition. And repetition is how anything great gets built. You have a project you want to start, a business you want to create, a skill you want to learn. But instead of taking the first step, you open 1,000 mental tabs. You imagine every possible failure. You negotiate with yourself. You debate with yourself. You replay conversations that never happened. You build entire disaster scenarios in your mind. And then you wonder why nothing changes. It's because you never acted. And you never acted because you overthought. And you overthought because you chose to. You have a choice. That's the key. You need to understand something fundamental. Your brain wants comfort, not clarity. It wants predictability, not progress. It wants to keep you safe from embarrassment, from effort, from risk. Overthinking is that system trying to stay in control. The longer you entertain the loop, the more power you give it. The more you feed the hesitation, the stronger it becomes. This is why analysis paralysis feels so heavy. You're not thinking. You're stalling. You're avoiding. And avoidance has weight. Avoidance slows you down. Avoidance steals your energy. Avoidance convinces you that standing still is safer than moving. But standing still is also a choice with consequences. Think about the last time you wanted to speak up in a meeting. You had the idea. You felt the urge. You knew what to say. And then the loop started. What if I'm wrong? What if they think I'm stupid? What if someone already said this? By the time you finish arguing with yourself, the moment is gone. Someone else takes the opportunity you threw away. Not because they were smarter, but because they acted before they negotiated with themselves. That's the 5-word rule. Act before you negotiate with yourself. Say it again. Act before you negotiate with yourself. Because the negotiation is the trap. The negotiation is where doubt multiplies. The negotiation is where discipline dies. You need to cut off the negotiation before it begins. You need to make the movement automatic. You need to condition your brain to understand that hesitation is the enemy. Look at fitness. You know exactly what to do. You know you need to train. You know you need to get up, get moving, get under the weight, get in the reps. But you lie in bed and start negotiating. I'm tired. Maybe later. I'll go twice tomorrow. These are the opening lines of the overthinking script. And once that script starts, it rarely ends with action. Again, overthinking is not ignorance. It's a decision. You have a choice. In relationships, the pattern is just as destructive. You overthink what to say. You overthink when to text. You overthink how they will react. You overthink whether you're good enough. Meanwhile, the relationship slowly crumbles because communication never happens. People don't leave because you said the wrong thing. They leave because you said nothing. Silence born from hesitation is still a choice. And often, it's the wrong one. The root problem is simple. You think clarity comes before action. But clarity comes from action. Every time, you learn by doing. You improve by doing. You build confidence by doing. Thinking alone has never transformed anyone. You can't think your way into discipline. You can't think your way into results. You can only act your way there. This is why overthinking feels so exhausting. Because your mind is doing work with no output. It burns energy, but creates nothing. It's like revving an engine in neutral. Noise, heat, no movement. And the longer you stay in that state, the more you start believing that starting is impossible. But it's not impossible. You just haven't started. You have a choice. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people overthink because action exposes them. Action forces results. Action forces growth. Action forces accountability. If you act, you can fail. If you act, you can be judged. If you act, you can be wrong. But if you overthink, you stay safe. You stay protected. You stay unchallenged. Overthinking is a shield. A weak one, a comfortable one, but still a shield. To break this habit, you need discipline, not more thinking. It's not about being fearless. It's about being decisive. It's not about eliminating doubt. It's about moving with doubt. That's the key. You have a choice. Here is your behavioral instruction. Set a 5-second window. When you feel the urge to act, speak, start, move, you have 5 seconds to begin. Physically begin. Open the document. Dial the number. Write the message. Put on your shoes. 5 seconds. Kill the second thought. The first thought is instinct. The second thought is fear. Never let the second thought speak. It is the birthplace of overthinking. Track decisions, not plans. Plans are mental comfort. Decisions are behavioral proof. At the end of each day, measure only what you did. Default to motion. When unsure, do the smaller version of the action. Half reps are better than no reps. Each of these steps rewires the loop. Each step reinforces the truth. You have a choice. You do not need permission to start. You do not need certainty to begin. You do not need the perfect time, the perfect plan, or the perfect conditions. Those are excuses dressed as logic. What you need is movement. What you need is discipline. What you need is to understand that overthinking is not a flaw. It is a decision you no longer have to make. End the loop. End the negotiation. End the delay. Act first. Think after. That's the key. You just learned the real cause of hesitation. Now it's time to confront the force that robs you of your energy every single day. Chapter 3. Your doubt is lying to you. Doubt has one job: distortion. Doubt exaggerates your flaws. Doubt minimizes your strengths. Doubt lies to you every single day, and most people never question it. They hear the voice, and they assume the voice is telling the truth. But it's not telling the truth. Doubt is distortion. Your doubt is not objective. It is not neutral. It is not logical. It is not a fair evaluation of your abilities or your potential. It is bias. It is fear. It is insecurity dressed up as realism. And every time you treat doubt as fact, you hand your life to the weakest part of your mind. You have a choice. That's the key. You can obey doubt, or you can challenge it. And the people you admire, the ones who build, the ones who rise, the ones who execute, they do not obey it. They feel doubt, but they don't bow to it. They don't negotiate with it. They don't let the distortion guide their decisions. Successful people feel doubt just as intensely as you do. You need to hear that. They feel it. They hear the same voice. You're not good enough. You're not ready. What if you fail? But they know something most people don't. Doubt is distortion. Doubt is noise. Doubt is not a command. Doubt is not the truth. Doubt is simply a suggestion from the part of your brain that fears growth. And you don't need that part's permission. Think about how often doubt shows up right before you attempt something meaningful. Before you speak, before you apply, before you lift, before you lead. That timing is not accidental. Doubt activates when you're on the edge of progress, because progress requires discomfort, and discomfort is the enemy of the part of your mind that wants safety. Doubt exaggerates your flaws. You take one weakness and turn it into your entire identity. One mistake becomes, I always screw up. One failure becomes, I'm not built for this. One rejection becomes, no one will ever accept me. That's how distortion works. It takes a moment and turns it into a narrative. It takes a feeling and turns it into a fact. It takes insecurity and turns it into destiny. You have a choice. You can indulge the distortion, or you can confront it. And confrontation is the discipline. That's the key. You need to internalize a truth that will shift your entire relationship with yourself. Your doubt is not protecting you. Your doubt is controlling you. It's keeping you small, cautious, silent, and stagnant. You think you're being responsible, but you're really being restrained. This is why so many people underestimate themselves. They don't see their own strengths. They don't recognize their own wins. They don't count their progress. They only count their flaws. Because doubt distorts the entire picture. It selectively highlights what hurts. It hides what helps. Even people at the top of their fields live with doubt. Top athletes, top founders, top entrepreneurs, top leaders. They still wake up with the same internal whispers. The difference is discipline, not confidence. It's not about flawlessness. It's about discipline. They know the doubt is lying. They know the doubt is exaggerating. They know the doubt is distortion. And they act anyway. Action in the presence of doubt is what separates the average from the exceptional. You cannot wait for doubt to disappear. It won't. You cannot wait for confidence to magically appear. It won't. You cannot wait until your emotions align with your goals. They won't. You have to move first. You have to lead your mind, not follow it. You have to act before the distortion gains leverage. This is where most people fail. They treat doubt like a stop sign instead of a warning light. A warning light is information. A stop sign is command. When you treat doubt like a command, you surrender. You hand over your decisions. You hand over your momentum. You hand over your potential. But you don't need your doubt's permission to move. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Now let's get into the practical framework. Because you need more than motivation, you need a repeatable process. A weapon you can use every time doubt shows up. This is the reframing exercise, and it has 3 parts. Write the doubt. Disprove the doubt. Replace the doubt. Part 1. Write the doubt. Put the distortion on paper. Doubt thrives in the dark. It thrives when it stays vague and emotional. The moment you write it down, you force clarity. You force structure. You force your brain to define the fear instead of letting it float around your mind like smoke. Write the exact sentence your doubt is telling you. I'm not talented enough. I'm going to fail. No one will take me seriously. Put the distortion in the light. Part 2. Disprove the doubt with evidence. Not with affirmations. Not with fantasies. Evidence. Real facts. Real wins. Real history. Doubt hates evidence because evidence destroys distortion. Write down every piece of proof that contradicts the lie. Times you succeeded. Times you showed discipline. Times you learned fast. Times you handled stress. Times you improved. Times you came back stronger. Your mind has decades of proof that you could do hard things, but doubt conveniently deletes it. This step restores it. Part 3. Replace the doubt with a command. Not a positive thought. Not a gentle reassurance. A command. A directive. A sentence that tells your brain what to do next. Something like, send the email, take the step, finish the set, start the task, speak up now. Commands create action. Action creates clarity. Clarity destroys distortion. That's the key. Do this process every day for a week, and you will start seeing the real pattern. Doubt isn't truth, it's habit. A habit you've obeyed for too long. A habit you can break with discipline. Remember, your doubt is not forecasting your future. It's replaying your fears. It speaks from insecurity, not intelligence. It speaks from protection, not potential. And you have a choice. You can listen to it, or you can override it. You don't need your doubt's permission to grow. You don't need your doubt's permission to speak. You don't need your doubt's permission to execute. You are not required to agree with the weakest voice in your head. Your life changes when you stop asking doubt for approval. Your life changes when you stop letting distortion drive your decisions. Your life changes when you practice the discipline of reframing, seeing the lie, proving it wrong, replacing it with action. Because this is how identity is rebuilt, not through motivation, through repetition, through evidence, through disciplined confrontation of the distortion inside your own head. You now understand the truth. Your doubt is lying to you. And once you know the lie, you can no longer obey it. That's the shift. That's the power. That's the key. You just reclaimed your mind. Now it's time to reclaim your momentum. Chapter 4. The Identity Trap. You are what you repeat. Your identity is not fixed. Your identity is not permanent. Your identity is not a destiny you were born into. Your identity is a pattern, nothing more, nothing less. And patterns can be rewritten. Repetition creates reality. That's the anchor of this entire chapter. Repetition creates reality. You're what you repeat, not what you intend, not what you hope for, not what you talk about, what you repeat. You have a choice. Every day, every hour, every decision, you are building an identity through repetition, whether you mean to or not. That's the key. You don't need anyone's permission to rewrite that identity. You just need discipline. People fall into the identity trap because they think identity is a personality trait. They think they were born shy. They think they were born lazy. They think they were born unmotivated. No, they were trained by repetition. They repeated avoidance. They repeated hesitation. They repeated excuses. And repetition became identity. Repetition creates reality. Take the shy identity. Most people who claim they're shy aren't actually shy. They're conditioned. Conditioned by years of avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation, avoiding being seen. They practiced disappearing. They practiced silence. They practiced holding back. And when you repeat hiding for long enough, you start to believe hiding is who you are. But it's not who you are. It's who you practice being. You have a choice. Take the lazy identity. Laziness is not a trait. Laziness is a loop. You repeated delay, so now delay feels comfortable. You repeated quitting, so now quitting feels natural. You repeated distraction, so now distraction feels automatic. People call themselves lazy because they don't want to admit the truth. It's not about laziness, it's about discipline. That's the key. Take the inconsistent identity. Inconsistency is not a personality type. It's a pattern of micro-quittings. You start strong. You fade fast. You stop early. And every time you repeat that sequence, your brain records it as identity. This is who I am. Someone who doesn't follow through. But that's not who you are. That's what you've repeated. Repetition creates reality. You need to confront a truth that most people avoid. Your identity today is not a reflection of your potential. It's a reflection of your patterns. And patterns can be rewritten with discipline. You don't need permission to become someone else. You don't need permission to change. You don't need permission to reset your identity. You have a choice. Your identity is a story you reinforce through action. If you keep telling yourself, I'm shy, I'm lazy, I'm inconsistent, you're not describing yourself. You're programming yourself. You're reinforcing the pattern. You're pouring concrete around a habit that should have been destroyed years ago. It's not about who you are. It's about what you repeat. If you want a new identity, you need a new pattern, a new script, a new repetition. Let me make this concrete for you. Think about the fittest person you know. They didn't become the fit person because they were born with discipline in their DNA. They became that person because they repeated the behavior that fit people repeat. They repeated workouts. They repeated nutrition habits. They repeated discipline. And repetition became identity. The same applies to confident people. Confident people aren't born confident. They repeat speaking up. They repeat stepping forward. They repeat being visible. They repeat action even when they're nervous. And repetition becomes confidence. Repetition creates reality. The question is, what are you repeating? What pattern are you reinforcing every day without even being aware of it? Because your repetition is either building you or breaking you. It is either pushing you forward or pulling you backward. It is either elevating you or eroding you. You have a choice. Now, let's move into the transformation, the identity reset. This is not philosophy. This is not theory. This is a blueprint, a process, a discipline. And if you follow it daily, your identity will shift faster than you think. The reset has 3 parts. Choose, act, speak. 1 new trait, 1 daily action, 1 sentence every morning. Part 1, choose 1 identity trait you want to build. Not 5, not 10, not a long list of ambitions. 1 identity shift, 1 trait you want to embody. It could be, I'm disciplined, I am consistent, I am courageous, I am focused, I'm a finisher. You choose. That's the key. You don't need permission. You set the identity. You define the trait. You declare who you are becoming. Part 2. Act on it daily. Identity requires evidence. You must give your brain proof. Without proof, the trait is fantasy. And fantasies don't create identity. Repetition does. If the identity is I am disciplined, then do one disciplined action every day. If the identity is I am consistent, then show up daily, even if the effort is small. If the identity is I am courageous, then do one thing that scares you daily. Small acts compound. Small acts accumulate. Small acts rewire identity. Repetition creates reality. Part 3. Speak it aloud every morning. This may feel uncomfortable at first. That's fine. Comfort is irrelevant. You're not doing this to feel good. You're doing this to rewire your brain. Your voice is a command. When you speak your identity out loud, you are instructing your subconscious. You are programming your next decision. You are reinforcing the trait you are building. Say it clearly. Say it directly. Say it without apology. I'm disciplined. I am consistent. I am focused. I am courageous. You are speaking the identity into existence through repetition. Every identity shift begins with discomfort. But discomfort is not a signal to stop. Discomfort is a signal that the old identity is being challenged. And that's exactly what you want. You want friction. You want resistance. Because resistance is proof that you're moving into a new version of yourself. You have a choice. Stay trapped in the old identity or build the new one. Most people never change because they wait for permission. They wait for confidence. They wait for motivation. They wait for the right moment. They wait for external validation. But you don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need the right moment. What you need is repetition. Repetition creates reality. If you repeat weakness, you become weak. If you repeat excuses, you become excuse-driven. If you repeat quitting, you become a quitter. But if you repeat discipline, you become disciplined. If you repeat courage, you become courageous. If you repeat consistency, you become unstoppable. That is how identity works. Simple, brutal, inescapable. You're what you repeat. So start repeating something that builds you instead of something that breaks you. You just learned the truth about identity. It is not fate, it is pattern. And you have the power to rewrite the pattern whenever you choose. You're not trapped. You're not fixed. You're not defined by your past. You can rebuild yourself from the ground up through repetition and discipline. You've broken the identity trap. Now it's time to break the habits that sustain it. Chapter 5. Stop seeking permission you never needed. You've been trained slowly, subtly, and continuously to look outward before you move, to ask before you act, to wait before you build. And somewhere along the way, you bought a lie. The lie that someone else must validate your actions before you can take them. The lie that progress requires permission. It is not. You don't need their permission. That is the key. And the sooner you internalize this, the sooner you regain control of your life. Look at your patterns. Be brutally honest. How many ideas have you delayed because you were waiting for someone to say, yes, that's good? How many goals have you postponed because no one offered support? How many dreams have you suffocated because you wanted a green light from people who were never responsible for your future? You have a choice. Continue waiting, or decide to move without applause. Understand this. The world rewards the person who acts, not the one who hesitates. The world bends for the decisive, not the compliant. And right now, you must confront a truth you've avoided for too long: your addiction to external validation. Look at the real examples. You had a business idea, but you waited for your friends to like the concept. You wanted to start a fitness plan, but you waited for your coworker to join you. You considered posting your art, your writing, your work, but you waited for someone, anyone, to confirm that it was good enough. And even worse, sometimes you never moved at all, because the approval never came. The support never came. The encouragement never came. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Your life cannot hinge on the comfort levels of other people. Most of the time, the people you're waiting on aren't even qualified to judge your vision. They don't see what you see. They don't feel what you feel. They aren't invested in your growth. Yet you hand them the authority to slow you down. That must end. Permission seeking is a habit. It's a quiet one, and it disguises itself as caution, humility, or thoughtfulness. But at its core, it is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of responsibility, fear of accountability, fear of standing alone. And if you allow that fear to guide your decisions, you will never move with power. This chapter is about liberation. It is about reclaiming the autonomy you traded away. It is about rewiring yourself to act without external approval. You have a choice. Keep shrinking into the shadows of hesitation, or step into the authority you already possess. You don't need their permission. That is the key. Here is the behavior you must adopt. Immediate action, internal validation, high-agency decision-making. You must become the source of your own green lights. Instead of asking, what will they think? You ask, is this aligned with my values, my discipline, my mission? If the answer is yes, you move. Quickly, clearly, decisively. Let's be practical. The next time you have an idea, execute the first step immediately. Not tomorrow, not after conversation, not after you run a poll. The moment the idea arrives, you take action. You start the document. You make the call. You design the draft. You book the flight. You begin. Action breaks permission addiction. You also need to understand the psychology behind your hesitation. You think external approval keeps you safe. It doesn't. It keeps you small. You think asking for permission helps you avoid mistakes. It doesn't. It guarantees you never grow enough to handle them. You think consulting everyone around you makes you responsible. It doesn't. It makes you dependent. Growth is not about safety. It is about strength. And strength is built when you decide without leaning on others. That brings us to the most important exercise in this chapter, the permission fast. The permission fast is a 72-hour challenge. For 3 days, you make decisions without asking anyone. No opinions, no confirmations, no what do you think, no forecasting someone else's reaction. For 72 hours, you rely exclusively on your judgment. Why 72 hours? Because that is long enough to break the old rhythm, but short enough that you can commit without excuses. For 3 days, you learn to trust your instincts. You learn to tolerate the discomfort of standing on your own choices. You learn that permission is not a requirement. It is a habit you outgrow. Here is how the fast works. Day 1, notice every moment you want to ask someone for their opinion. That impulse is the addiction revealing itself. Instead of asking, make the call yourself. If you want to post the content, post it. If you need to buy something, decide. If you've been debating a project, begin it. The key is awareness and interruption. The moment your mind reaches outward, you pull it back inward. Day 2, increase the stakes. Make decisions that feel slightly uncomfortable. Send the email. Pitch the idea. Set the boundary. Decline the invitation. Take the step you've been postponing. You don't need their permission. And on day 2, you prove it. Day 3, act with speed. No hesitation. No second guessing. No spiraling. If the action aligns with your mission, you do it. This is where your confidence grows. This is where you learn how capable you are. This is where you realize how much time you've wasted letting other people's opinions slow your momentum. When the 72 hours end, something shifts inside you. You realize that the world didn't collapse when you stopped asking for approval. You realize that your decisions were better than you expected. You realize that nobody was actually paying attention to your choices. Most people were too consumed with their own lives to judge yours. That is the freedom you've been missing. And that freedom is only possible when you stop giving away your authority. If you want transformation, you must stop waiting for someone to authorize your growth. You must stop delaying your progress until the people around you feel comfortable. You must stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's expectations. You have a choice. live small with their permission, or live fully without it. And understand this. Every major breakthrough in your life will require you to act without approval. Every leap forward will feel lonely at first. Every bold move will feel risky before it feels right. That is the path of growth. That is the path of power. That is the path of discipline. It is not about fear. It is about discipline. Discipline to trust yourself. Discipline to act without applause. Discipline to move without permission. You don't need their permission. That is the key. Take the fast seriously. Treat it as the turning point. Because once you experience the power of relying on your own authority, you will refuse to return to the version of yourself that waited, hesitated, and paused for approval that never came. You are capable of more than you've demonstrated. But capability means nothing without action. And action means nothing if it is always delayed by someone else's reaction. You have a choice. Choose independence. Choose decisiveness. Choose discipline. And choose to walk into your next chapter with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what they are capable of. You've broken the need for permission. Now it's time to break something even deeper. Chapter 6. Build discipline or be owned by emotion. You already know the truth, even if you avoid saying it out loud. Your emotions are running your life. And every time they take the wheel, they drive you straight into regret, distraction, and self-sabotage. You feel something and you react. You get triggered and you explode. You feel insecure and you shut down. You feel jealous and you spiral. Then you tell yourself you couldn't help it. But you could. You always could. Because it's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Let's start there. You are not weak because you feel strongly. You are weak because you obey those feelings without question. That's the difference. That's the problem. And that is exactly what you're going to fix in this chapter. Because you have a choice. You always had a choice. That's the key. Emotion is not the enemy. Your lack of discipline is. Emotion is data. Discipline is direction. Without discipline, emotion becomes a weapon you turn on yourself. With discipline, emotion becomes fuel you can aim with precision. The question is simple. Who is in charge? Your feelings or your choices? Look back at the last few months of your life. Be brutally honest. How many opportunities did you ruin because you reacted too fast? How many relationships did you strain because you spoke before thinking? How many hours did you waste because you let anxiety hijack your focus? How many things did you avoid because fear convinced you to shrink instead of act? When you stack up those moments, the pattern is clear. You weren't derailed by circumstance. You weren't blocked by a lack of talent. You weren't defeated by fate. You were taken out by emotion you failed to control. That's the uncomfortable truth. And that is why this chapter matters. Because from this moment forward, you will repeat a new mantra. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it again. Say it until it becomes a reflex. Say it until it becomes who you are. Emotion is a storm. Discipline is the anchor. And right now, your anchor is too light. You drift with every wave. You bend with every gust of wind. You collapse every time life applies pressure. That ends here. Let's break down what emotional impulsiveness really costs you. Anger. It feels powerful. It feels righteous. But in reality, anger makes you sloppy. Anger makes you reckless. Anger makes you say things you can't take back. Anger destroys trust in seconds. You think you're standing up for yourself, but most of the time, you're just lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. That's not strength. That's surrender. You didn't choose your reaction. Your emotion chose it for you. Jealousy. This one eats your energy like acid. It pulls your attention away from your lane and dumps it into other people's wins. And the more you indulge it, the weaker you become. Jealousy tricks you into believing someone else's success reduces yours. That distortion breeds resentment. Resentment kills your momentum. And all along, the problem wasn't jealousy. The problem was lack of discipline. Insecurity. This one is subtle. It whispers instead of shouts. But it's just as destructive. Insecurity convinces you to play small. It convinces you to stay silent. It convinces you to hide your potential because you don't want to be judged. You call this humility or caution, but it's not. It's just emotional obedience. It's just another moment where you let a feeling override a choice. And again, you have a choice. That is the core of this chapter. Your emotions can scream. They can plead. They can surge, but they cannot act without you. You act. You choose. You direct. Or at least you should. Because the truth is this. Discipline is the only thing that separates reaction from power. That's the key. And now it's time for the tool you will use to reclaim that power. It's called the discipline delay. It is brutally simple. It is radically effective. And it will change your life if you actually use it. Here's how it works. Whenever you feel a triggering emotion, anger, envy, fear, shame, insecurity, frustration, you do nothing for 90 seconds. Nothing. You don't send the message. You don't clap back. You don't defend yourself. You don't justify. You don't explain. You don't retreat. You don't react. You wait. 90 seconds. That's it. You can feel whatever you feel, but you do not act. That's the rule. That's the discipline. And the science is simple. The biochemical life cycle of a strong emotional surge is only 90 seconds unless you feed it with thought. Without reinforcement, the wave passes. With reinforcement, the wave grows into a storm. You choose which path you walk. You have a choice. In those 90 seconds, something powerful happens. The emotion stops being the driver. You start being the driver. You separate the feeling from the action. You turn reactivity into strategy. You flip the power dynamic. You stop being owned by emotion and start owning it. That's the key. You will be shocked at how many disasters you avoid simply by refusing to react immediately. You will be stunned at how many arguments dissolve when you pause instead of fire back. You will be amazed at how much clarity arrives when you give your mind 90 seconds to breathe before making a move. The discipline delay is not weakness. It is not repression. It is control. It is power. It is intentionality. Let me make this even clearer. Nobody destroys their life slowly. People destroy their lives in seconds. A text sent too fast. A decision made too emotionally. A rage-filled outburst. A jealous accusation. A moment of insecurity that triggers a retreat from opportunity. These explosions take seconds. And each time the cost is high. But each time you could have stopped it. Because it's not about emotion. It's about discipline. What does life look like when discipline takes the driver's seat? You become calmer. Not because you feel less, but because you don't react to every feeling. You become sharper. Not because you never get distracted, but because you choose your focus. You become stronger. Not because you avoid emotional storms, but because you anchor through them. You become trustworthy to yourself. That is a rare kind of strength. And here is the deeper transformation. When you stop reacting to emotion, emotion becomes useful. Anger becomes clarity. Fear becomes awareness. Jealousy becomes direction. Insecurity becomes feedback. You no longer drown in emotion. You repurpose it, but it all starts with discipline. It always has, and it always will. So starting today, you make a new commitment. Before you act, you discipline. Before you respond, you discipline. Before you choose, you discipline. Because you have a choice. You always did. You're no longer playing the game of instant emotional obedience. You're playing the game of long-term power, long-term clarity, long-term control. You don't need their permission to manage your emotions. You don't need their approval to adopt discipline. And you don't need anyone to validate this transformation. This is yours. You've confronted fear. You've confronted doubt. You've confronted the identity trap. You've confronted the permission addiction. And now, you've confronted the truth about emotional control. You're stepping into a stronger version of yourself. A more deliberate version. A more stable version. A more disciplined version. Now that you understand the cost of emotional impulsiveness, it's time to tackle the next invisible force sabotaging your growth. the noise you surround yourself with. You mastered the discipline delay. Now, let's talk about the true currency of your attention. Chapter 7, the power of doing what you said you would do. Let's strip this down to the core. Your life rises or falls on one simple pattern. Do you do what you said you would do? That's it. That's the metric. That's the scoreboard. Not your intentions, not your potential, not your talent, your execution, your follow-through, your consistency. Because consistency is identity. And if your consistency is broken, your identity is broken. You know this. You felt it. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, a piece of you dissolves. Every time you say you'll start tomorrow and don't, your confidence shrinks. Every time you commit and then cancel, you train yourself to distrust your own voice. You teach your mind that your word means nothing. And once you stop believing yourself, everything collapses. That's the trap. You think you're only skipping a workout. You think you're only delaying a project. You think you're only ignoring a small task. But you're not. You are rewriting your identity. You are declaring, through action, I don't follow through. I can't rely on myself. I don't finish things. That becomes your story. That becomes your pattern. And patterns become identity. Consistency is identity. That's the key. Let's look at the moments where self-trust breaks. You wake up and say you'll hit the gym. Then you don't. You say you'll drink water instead of soda. Then you don't. You say you'll clean your room. Then you don't. You say you'll start the business. Then you don't. You say you'll stop scrolling. Then you don't. You say, but you don't do. And every time, even if no one else notices, you notice. You feel the gap between who you want to be and who you are. That gap is built from broken promises. Let's be direct. Your results are not random. They are reflections of your reliability to yourself. If you want a stronger identity, you must build stronger consistency. If you want power, you must build trust. And trust isn't built with speeches. Trust is built with proof, repetition, action, follow through. Think of the most disciplined people you know. They're not superhuman. They're not geniuses. They simply repeat one behavior. They do what they said they would do. Even when they're tired, even when they're stressed, even when they're busy, even when no one is watching. That's the difference. That's the discipline. And you have that same capacity. You have a choice. But here's the truth most people never face. You cannot create a powerful life with a weak relationship to yourself. You cannot lead others when you don't lead yourself. You cannot build anything meaningful on a foundation that keeps cracking. Your word is the foundation. Your consistency is the reinforcement. And every action is a vote for the identity you're becoming. Let's go deeper. When you don't do what you said you would do, you fall into 3 predictable cycles. Cycle 1, excuses. You justify. You rationalize. You soften the blow. You say it didn't matter. You say you'll do better later. But excuses don't protect you. They just stop you from seeing the real damage. Because the real damage is internal. The identity is weakening. Cycle 2, shame. You feel guilty for not doing it. But instead of breaking the cycle, you pile on self-criticism. Shame breeds avoidance. Avoidance breeds more broken promises. Now you're stuck. Cycle 3, numbness. Eventually, you stop caring. You stop expecting anything from yourself. And that is the most dangerous state, because once you become numb to your own potential, you stop trying altogether. You hand your life over to autopilot. But you can break this. You can rebuild this. You can flip your identity back into alignment. And it doesn't take months. It doesn't take years. It takes consistency. Consistency is identity. Now it's time for the tool that will rebuild your self-trust brick by brick. It's called the non-negotiable list. It is deceptively simple. It is uncomfortably strict. And it will change your relationship with yourself more than anything else in this audiobook. Here's how it works. Every morning, you write down 3 actions you will complete that day. Not 10, not 20, 3. These are not I hope to tasks. These are not if I have time tasks. These are non-negotiable. These are mandatory. These are absolute. These are promises you must keep. And here's the rule. You cannot go to bed until all three are done. No excuses, no delays, no negotiation. 3 actions, 3 completions, 3 wins. Every day. That's the discipline. That's the structure. That's the identity. And let's be clear, the power of this list doesn't come from the size of the tasks. It comes from the discipline of completion. It comes from the feeling of ending the day knowing you did what you said you would do. That feeling is confidence. That feeling is self-respect. That feeling is identity. Here's what your non-negotiable list might look like. Finish a 20-minute workout. Write for 15 minutes. Clean your desk. Or send 2 business emails. Meditate for 5 minutes. Avoid junk food for the entire day. Or make your bed. Read 10 pages. Walk for 15 minutes. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is that you choose and you complete, because consistency is identity. That's the key. You're not doing this to impress anyone. You're not doing this to post online. You're doing this to rebuild the most important relationship in your life, the one you have with yourself. Because here's the transformation. When you keep your promises to yourself, your self-image rises. When you keep your promises to yourself, your standards rise. When you keep your promises to yourself, your ambition rises. When you keep your promises to yourself, your possibilities expand. You become someone who follows through. You become someone who finishes what they start. You become someone who chooses discipline over emotion. You become someone who doesn't need motivation because consistency becomes reflex. And let's be honest, the people around you can feel the difference. A person who keeps their own promises shows up differently, speaks differently, works differently, walks differently, because their identity is aligned with their actions. Your life becomes predictable, not because you repeat failures, but because you repeat discipline. You build stability, you build momentum, you build belief, you build a version of yourself you can trust. And trust is power. You spent too many years breaking promises to yourself. You spent too many days saying tomorrow. You've spent too many hours negotiating with your own potential. Now you build consistency. Now you build identity. Now you do what you said you would do. And once you reclaim that power, you become unstoppable. Because nothing is more dangerous than a person who trusts themselves. Nothing. You've strengthened your discipline. You've regained your self-trust. You've reestablished the foundation of your identity. Now it's time to confront the next enemy. Not internal, but external. The people around you, the environments you tolerate, and the influence you allow. Chapter 8. Control your attention, control your life. Your life is the sum of what you pay attention to. That's the truth most people never confront. Not your dreams, not your promises, not your potential, your attention. Because whatever controls your attention controls your direction. And whatever controls your direction controls your identity. Control attention, control direction. That's the key. Every day, you wake up with a limited amount of focus, a limited amount of energy, a limited amount of mental bandwidth. And every distraction, every notification, every scroll, every comparison steals a piece of your future. That's not exaggeration. That's reality. Your attention is not free. It's currency, and you spend it carelessly. You wonder why you feel overwhelmed. You wonder why your progress is slow. You wonder why your goals feel distant. It's simple. You have trained your attention to scatter. You have conditioned your mind to drift. You have built habits of distraction, one swipe and one scroll at a time. And you didn't even notice it happening. But here's the truth I need you to accept with force. Your attention didn't get hijacked by accident. It got hijacked because you surrendered it. And if you surrendered it, you can reclaim it. You have a choice. Let's look at how you lose attention. You reach for your phone the moment you open your eyes. Dopamine hit. You check messages before you check your priorities. Distraction begins. You scroll for 5 minutes. That turns into 20. Momentum gone. You compare yourself to someone's curated highlight reel. Confidence drained. You switch between tasks, tabs, apps, thoughts. Focus shattered. Your brain gets rewired for passivity. Your mind becomes reactive. And a reactive mind is a powerless mind. You end the day exhausted, but not accomplished. Busy, but not productive. Stimulated, but not fulfilled. You didn't run out of time. You ran out of attention. Control attention, control direction. That's the key. Here's the part that's uncomfortable to admit. Distraction isn't something that happens to you. Distraction is something you choose. And each choice trains your identity. Focus is not a talent. Focus is not a personality type. Focus is a discipline. And if you don't build it, everything else collapses. Let's break down the real cost of scattered attention. Cost number 1, loss of momentum. Every time you switch tasks, you reset your flow. Research shows it takes minutes, sometimes tens of minutes, to regain the same depth of focus. You think you're multitasking, but you're not. You're fragmenting yourself. You're dividing your mind into pieces so small that none of them can create anything meaningful. Cost number 2, loss of confidence. When you don't finish tasks, your identity shifts. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't follow through, someone who can't stay focused, someone who can't maintain momentum. Your self-trust erodes. And once you lose trust in your own attention, you lose trust in your own potential. Cost number 3, loss of direction. Your life becomes reactive. You chase others' priorities, others' opinions, others' noise. You start living on autopilot, saying yes to everything except the one thing that actually matters, your own purpose. But the good news is this: attention is trainable. Attention is rebuildable. Attention is yours to reclaim. And once you reclaim it, everything sharpens, everything clarifies, everything accelerates. Now it's time to give you a tool, a structure, a daily discipline that will rebuild your focus from the ground up. It's called the focus lock. The focus lock is simple. It's strict. It's powerful. And if you commit to it for the next 7 days, your mind will change. Your attention will strengthen. Your productivity will explode. And most importantly, your identity will shift. Here's how it works. Every day, you complete 2 distraction-free work cycles. Each cycle lasts 25 minutes. No notifications, no social media, no multitasking, no background noise, no interruptions. 25 minutes. Locked in, focused, immersed. Then you take a short break. 5 minutes. Move, breathe, reset, and then you repeat 1 more cycle. That's it. 2 cycles. 50 minutes total. 50 minutes that will do more for your life than 10 hours of scattered effort. Because those 50 minutes are pure. Those 50 minutes are intentional. Those 50 minutes rebuild your capacity for deep work. They train your mind to stay present. They strengthen your discipline. They remind you that you control your attention, not the world, not the algorithm, not your impulses. And once you feel that control returning, something shifts inside you. You begin to feel grounded again. You begin to feel capable again. You begin to feel like the person who chooses their own direction, not the one dragged by distraction. Let's address the excuses that will show up. I don't have time. You do. You waste more than 50 minutes a day scrolling. I get bored. Of course you do. Your brain has been addicted to stimulation. The boredom is withdrawal. Stay with it. I lose focus. That's exactly why you're doing this. Focus is a muscle, and you're rebuilding it. I don't know what to work on. Choose the task that moves your life forward the most. Or pick one thing you've been avoiding. Hard is okay. Hard is good. Hard builds identity. You have a choice. You can keep living in reaction, or you can rebuild the discipline of attention. And you need to understand the broader impact. When you control your attention, you control your emotions. When you control your attention, you control your cravings. When you control your attention, you control your identity. Distraction steals identity. Focus restores it. Your inner voice becomes sharper. Your decision-making becomes clearer. Your self-respect grows, and your mental strength compounds. People with strong attention move differently. They speak with clarity. They act with certainty. They create with power. Because they're not scattered. They're not pulled in 10 directions. They're not lost in noise. They're anchored. That's what you're building now, an anchored mind. You need to remember something vital. Every time you choose focus, you train discipline. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen identity. Every time you complete a focus lock cycle, you prove to yourself that you are in control. Control attention, control direction. Control attention, control identity. And once you have your identity back, your entire life recalibrates. So here's your directive. Starting today, complete your 2 focus lock cycles. No compromises, no excuses, no negotiation. Do them even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because it's not about comfort, it's about discipline. And the more you practice this, the more you'll notice something incredible. Distractions lose their power. Noise becomes irrelevant. Other people's opinions fade. You stop reacting. You start directing. You stop drifting. You start building. Your attention becomes a weapon. Your mind becomes your ally. Your identity becomes unstoppable. You've strengthened your ability to follow through. Now you're strengthening your ability to focus. This is how you take command of your mental world. Piece by piece, discipline by discipline, choice by choice. You've learned how to control your attention. Now it's time to control something even more powerful, your environment. Because your attention doesn't exist in a vacuum. Your surroundings shape your mind more than you realize. You mastered the focus lock. Now let's sharpen your world. Chapter 9, build mental armor through your environment. Your environment is not neutral. Your environment is not passive. Your environment is a trainer. Every day, it is shaping you, whether you notice it or not. That is why the anchor of this chapter is simple, sharp, and non-negotiable. Your environment trains you. You have a choice. You could design your environment, or you could be destroyed by it. That is the key. Most people think their failures come from a lack of motivation. They think they need more inspiration, more discipline, more confidence. But the truth is far less glamorous and far more uncomfortable. Your environment pulls the strings of your behavior long before motivation ever arrives. Your environment decides what you notice, what you avoid, what you pursue, and what you tolerate. Cluttered spaces breed cluttered thoughts. Messy rooms create messy decisions. Toxic people drain your willpower before breakfast. Digital overload rewires your brain for distraction and helplessness. And yet, people keep trying to will their way through a battlefield they built against themselves. They expect discipline to grow in the middle of chaos. It doesn't, because your environment trains you. You have a choice. You can keep pretending your surroundings don't matter, or you can take responsibility for every stimulus, every influence, and every person that enters your world. That is the key. Let's break it down. Toxic environments crush your energy before discipline ever has a chance. Think about the people around you. Are they building you, or are they bleeding you? You already know who drains you. You already know who injects doubt, cynicism, and negativity into your mind. You already know who pulls you back into old habits, old patterns, old versions of yourself. Most people stay stuck not because they lack strength, but because they refuse to let go of weak influences. They don't want to cut people off. They don't want to feel guilty. They don't want to disrupt relationships that are already poisoning them. But listen closely, you don't need their permission. You don't need approval to protect your mind. You don't need validation to build a better life. It's not about being harsh. It's about being disciplined. It's not about hurting feelings. It's about protecting your future. It's not about isolation. It's about elevation, because your environment trains you. Now look at your physical space. Walk into your room. Walk into your workspace. Look at the state of it. Does it reflect focus? Or does it reflect avoidance? Does it reflect discipline? Or does it reflect chaos? A cluttered environment continuously signals your brain that there is unfinished business. It keeps you stressed. It keeps you distracted. It keeps you overwhelmed. You can't build mental armor in a room that feels like a battlefield of old decisions you never dealt with. You can't build clarity surrounded by waste, dust, and digital debris. You have a choice. Clean your environment, clean your mind. That is the key. Now, look at your digital space. Your phone is a doorway. It can open you to discipline, or it can open you to distraction. And right now, most people's phones are designed to train them into passivity. Notifications rob your focus. Apps hijack your attention. Scrolling destroys your intention. Every swipe is a lesson your brain learns. Distraction equals reward. Escape equals comfort. Delay equals pleasure. Your environment trains you, and your digital world is the strongest trainer you have. The question is it training you to be unstoppable? Or is it training you to be unproductive? You have a choice. That is the key. Here's the truth you need to hear. You cannot outperform a destructive environment with sheer willpower. You cannot stay disciplined in a space that works against you. You cannot build strength in a room full of weakness triggers. You cannot build peace in a space designed for noise. You cannot build focus while drowning in digital chaos. And yet, every one of these can change today, not tomorrow, not when life gets easier, not when you finally feel ready. Today. So here is your directive. Clear, simple, and powerful. Remove one toxic person, one distraction, and one bad habit today. Not all of them. Not 10 things. Not your whole life at once. Just one, because small changes change everything. Remove one toxic person. Someone who drains your drive, your clarity, your momentum. You know exactly who it is. Create distance. Reduce access. Silence their influence. You don't need their permission. That is the key. Remove one distraction. Maybe it's an app. Maybe it's a place. Maybe it's a habit you keep falling into at the worst possible times. Delete it. Remove it. Hide it. Replace it. Your environment trains you, so start training it. Remove one bad habit. Pick the habit that derails your progress the most. Late night scrolling, procrastination rituals, snacking instead of working, sleeping next to your phone. Choose one. Cut it. Replace it with something simple, clean, and intentional. You have a choice. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. It's not about overwhelm. It's about direction. It's not about perfection. It's about taking control of the space that shapes you. Your environment is the armor you wear. Your environment is the battlefield you fight on. Your environment is the guidance system that directs your attention, your energy, and your identity. And remember, if you don't build your environment will build you. If you don't shape it, it will shape you. If you don't take control, something else will. Your environment trains you. Every minute, every habit, every decision. You have a choice. Choose the environment that chooses your future. That is the key. Now that you understand the power of the space around you, it's time to go deeper into the power within you. Because once your environment is aligned, your next challenge is sharpening the tool that moves you through it. You strengthened your surroundings. Now, let's strengthen your identity. Chapter 10, The Command Ritual. Master your mind, master your life. Your mind is the battlefield. Every thought is a soldier. Every impulse is an order. And until now, most of those soldiers have been following the wrong command. That ends today. You have a choice. You can let your thoughts run wild, or you can take command. That is the key. Most people are not conscious of their inner dialogue. They wake up, and their first thought is fear. Their first thought is doubt. Their first thought is, I'm not ready, or I can't do this. Then they let that voice dictate their day. That voice decides whether they speak up or stay silent. That voice decides whether they take action or procrastinate. That voice decides whether they invest in themselves or waste their time. Most people obey their inner critic without question. They obey it automatically. They obey it habitually. They obey it as if it were law. And that's the trap. Because thoughts obey discipline, not the other way around. You have a choice. You don't have to obey every fear, doubt, or insecurity that surfaces. You don't need permission from your past mistakes or your negative self-talk. You don't need validation from outside sources. You decide, You command. That is the key. Here is the truth. Mastering your mind is not about stopping thoughts. It's not about blocking the negative. It's about creating a ritual, a system, a daily practice that trains your mind to follow the orders you give it. Discipline is the bridge between chaos and control. Discipline is the engine. Discipline is the signal that your thoughts will now obey you. That is why we use the daily mental command ritual. The ritual has 3 parts: morning intention, dominant thought, and nightly review. 3 parts, done daily, non-negotiable. Let's start with the morning intention. Before you check your phone, before you read the news, before you hear anyone else's opinion, you decide your first thought. Say it aloud. Write it down. Cement it in your mind. For example, I'm focused today. I act decisively. I finish what I start. Or, I leave my mind. I do not follow fear. I do not obey doubt. The morning intention is simple but powerful. It programs the brain. It sets the stage. It tells your soldiers, listen to me first, not the chatter in your head. Next, choose your dominant thought. This is the idea you carry into every action, every conversation, every decision. It's not random. It's not reactive. It's deliberate. It's the command that drives your day. For example, I complete what I start. I control my emotions. They do not control me. I focus on what matters. I ignore distractions. This dominant thought acts as a lens. Every perception, every reaction, every choice is filtered through it. It becomes a mental anchor. It becomes your internal compass. Here's the key. Thoughts obey discipline. If you repeat a command enough, consistently, it becomes automatic. It shapes behavior. It shapes identity. It shapes results. Finally, the nightly review. At the end of the day, before sleep, reflect. Ask yourself, did I follow my morning intention? Did my dominant thought guide my actions? Where did I falter? Where did I succeed? Then write it down. 1 sentence, 2 sentences. Be honest. Be clear. Reinforce what worked. Correct what didn't. This is the feedback loop. This is where learning becomes mastery. Without review, intention drifts. Without review, dominance is lost. Without review, the old voice creeps back in. By doing this every day, you train your mind to obey your commands, not your fears. You train your mind to act, not overthink. You train your mind to build confidence, not dwell on doubt. Let's be clear, this is not easy. Your mind resists change. Old patterns fight back. Negative voices scream louder at first. That is normal. That is expected. Push through. Repeat the ritual. That is the key. Now let's talk about why this works. First, attention creates reality. What you focus on expands. If your attention is scattered, your results are scattered. If your attention is disciplined, your results are consistent. You cannot control your life without controlling your mind. Second, words command behavior. When you verbalize your intention, you engage the conscious mind. When you repeat it, you engage the subconscious. The soldiers in your mind listen to repeated orders. They learn. They obey. Third, reflection closes the loop. Without reflection, mistakes repeat. Without reflection, victories fade. Without reflection, growth stalls. Nightly review cements lessons, reinforces wins, and resets the battlefield for the next day. This is how ordinary people become unstoppable. This is how hesitation becomes decisiveness. This is how doubt becomes clarity. This is how fear becomes action. Remember, the voice in your head no longer leads. You do. It is no longer automatic. It is no longer uncontrolled. It is no longer the default decision maker. You have a choice. You can ignore this ritual and drift, or you can act with precision. You can enforce your will. You can become the commander of your own mind. That is the key. Start today. Morning intention, dominant thought, nightly review, 3 steps, daily, non-negotiable. Train your mind, train your life, because thoughts obey discipline, not emotion, not fear, not external approval. You have a choice. You You have the power. You have the command. And when you follow it, your life will finally reflect your intent. You mastered fear, overthinking, and distraction. You built discipline and focus. You cleaned your environment and trained your identity. Now you master the most important battlefield, your mind. Your soldiers are ready. Your battlefield is prepared. Your commands are clear. Execute them. Control your mind. Control your life. Thoughts obey discipline. Chapter complete. Conclusion. This entire audiobook has led to one truth. The voice inside you is not your master. Fear isn't your commander. Doubt isn't your identity. Overthinking isn't your personality. They were habits, trained, repeated, reinforced. And now you break them. You've learned how to disrupt fear. You've learned how to override doubt. You've learned how to cut permission-seeking, silence emotional chaos, and command your attention. You've learned that discipline creates identity, and identity shapes destiny. From this moment forward, you are no longer reacting to life. You are directing it. You choose your thoughts. You choose your actions. You choose your identity. And every day you execute the command ritual, you prove to yourself who is in control. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, obey every disciplined thought you choose and ignore every fearful one. 7 days. No negotiation. No excuses. No retreat. This is where the old self dies and the disciplined self begins. The voice of doubt had its turn. Now it's your turn.